In the heart of Orlando, Florida, a young woman named Jennifer Kesse was living the kind of life many people in their mid-20s aspired to. At 24 years old, Jennifer had already built a foundation that reflected her drive, intelligence, and independence. She had graduated from the University of Central Florida, earned a steady job as a financial analyst at a large company, and was admired by her co-workers for her determination and professionalism. In a city known for its transient population, Jennifer stood out as someone rooted and purposeful, creating her own path with discipline and quiet confidence. Jennifer's home symbolized this independence. She had recently purchased a condominium at the Mosaic at Millennia, a new complex on the edge of downtown Orlando. Owning property at her age was unusual among her peers, and her family saw it as yet another sign of her ambition. She was proud of this accomplishment, though the neighborhood surrounding the development was still under construction. The ongoing work brought with it an influx of contractors and laborers, something Jennifer occasionally mentioned to her parents as an annoyance when she dealt with catcalls or felt eyes following her as she walked by. Despite this, she had created a haven inside her condo, a personal space filled with her energy, carefully decorated to reflect the steady rhythm of her life. Her routine was as consistent as it was reassuring. Jennifer was a creature of habit. She called her parents frequently, checked in with her brother Logan, and maintained a strong connection with her boyfriend, Rob Allen, with whom she shared a steady long-distance relationship. Friends described her as dependable, responsible, and fiercely punctual, the type of person who would never simply disappear without explanation. Her co-workers knew her as someone who always arrived at the office on time and left an impression of quiet professionalism. Her reliability was her signature. In January of 2006, Jennifer was enjoying the comfort of this balance. Just days before her disappearance, she had taken a short trip with Rob to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The vacation had been a welcome escape, a chance for the couple to reconnect away from the pressures of work and daily life. Sunlit beaches, ocean breezes, and laughter filled the days, leaving Jennifer refreshed by the time they returned to Florida. Friends recalled her speaking warmly about the trip, excited about the memories they had made together. Back in Orlando, Jennifer slipped easily into her regular rhythm. On the evening of January 23rd, she spoke with Rob on the phone for nearly an hour. They had discussed plans for the coming weeks and ended the conversation with the kind of affection that had become second nature. Nothing in her tone suggested distress, worry, or fear. To Rob, it was simply another ordinary evening with Jennifer. She also maintained her usual contact with family. Earlier that night, she had spoken with her mother, Joyce, sounding tired but upbeat. She mentioned her return to work and the pile of tasks waiting for her after vacation. Still, Jennifer's voice carried no sign of unease. She was preparing for a standard work week, moving methodically through the simple rituals of life, laying out clothes, setting an alarm, and making sure her belongings were ready for the morning commute. That night was supposed to be unremarkable, the kind of evening easily forgotten in the blur of adulthood. But in retrospect, it became the last verifiable moment of her known life. Sometime after hanging up the phone, Jennifer went to bed inside her condo. By all accounts, she had every intention of waking early, driving to her office, and continuing the steady rhythm of her week. The next morning, however, something broke that pattern. Jennifer did not arrive at work. She did not answer her phone. Calls from Rob went unanswered. When her office realized she had not shown up, a sharp deviation from her reputation for reliability, concern escalated quickly. By the afternoon of January 24th, her absence had already begun to alarm those closest to her. For a woman so defined by structure, the silence was jarring. Unbeknownst to her family at the time, the quiet suburban condo complex where Jennifer had carefully built her independence was about to become the focal point of a mystery that continues to haunt Orlando nearly 2 decades later. What began as an ordinary day would soon fracture into a chilling timeline filled with unanswered questions, leading investigators, loved ones, and the public into a case where the first missing pieces were found not in chaos but in the sudden, unnatural stillness of Jennifer's absence. The Jennifer that her friends and family remembered was not someone prone to vanishing. She was steady, grounded, and cautious. Her disappearance was not simply the absence of a young woman. It was the abrupt rupture of a carefully constructed life, one with no cracks, no instability, and no signs of collapse. As the hours stretched into nightfall and Jennifer failed to appear, her family's unease deepened into dread. Something was terribly wrong. This was not a story of gradual unraveling or quiet detachment from the world. Jennifer's life was not in decline. It was ascending. She was advancing in her career, secure in her relationships, and planning for a future that promised stability and fulfillment. And yet, that very trajectory would make her sudden disappearance even more confounding. By the end of that day, January 24th, Jennifer Kesse had become the center of an enigma. A young woman who seemed to vanish from within the safety of her own routine, leaving behind no farewell, no explanation, and no obvious trace. Her last known act, a phone call filled with ordinary conversation, marked the beginning of one of Florida's most haunting mysteries. You're watching Trace of Evil, where we reveal true crimes, unsolved disappearances, and mysteries surrounding crime. Like and subscribe to watch more episodes from our channel. Let's get back into the story of Jennifer Kesse. Tuesday, January 24th, 2006. The city of Orlando stirred awake under a warm sunrise, commuters pouring onto highways, students rushing toward school, and workers slipping into daily routines. Among them should have been Jennifer Kesse, a young professional with discipline etched into every aspect of her life. She was never late. She was never unreliable. That morning, however, her absence triggered a series of events that remain one of Florida's most haunting mysteries. Jennifer had returned from a weekend trip to St. Croix with her boyfriend, Rob, just the night before. She had gone straight to work on Monday, despite the exhaustion of travel. Friends later recalled that she appeared tired but upbeat, even sharing stories about the trip. She left work on time, stopped by her condo, and later called Rob. Their conversation, around 10 p.m., carried no tension, no odd undertones. It was the type of everyday exchange that ends with the promise of tomorrow. That tomorrow never came. When Jennifer failed to show up at her office at Central Florida Investments the next morning, coworkers immediately noticed. This was not someone who slept late or casually ignored her phone. Within hours, supervisors reached out to her family, raising the first alarm bells. By noon, her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse, had driven nearly 2 hours from their home to Orlando, panic mounting with every passing minute. At her condo, located in the newly renovated Mosaic at Millennia Complex, everything appeared normal at first glance. The door was locked, her belongings neatly in place, and there were no signs of forced entry. The absence of chaos was chilling. It suggested that Jennifer had prepared for her day as usual. Her outfit from the night before lay folded on a chair. The shower was damp, as if recently used. On her bathroom counter sat the remnants of her routine: hair straightener, makeup, the tools of an organized young woman readying herself for work. Yet she was gone. Her black 2004 Chevrolet Malibu was missing, and so was her phone, purse, and briefcase. These details added an unnerving layer. Jennifer hadn't simply walked out for a casual errand. It appeared she had been en route to her normal life, only to vanish somewhere between her front door and her destination. The Kesse family immediately sensed danger. To them, Jennifer's disappearance could not be explained away by stress, spontaneity, or secret plans. Police, however, initially leaned toward a more cautious stance. Adults, they reasoned, had the right to go missing if they wished. Jennifer was 24, independent, and financially stable. But as hours passed with no activity on her credit cards, no phone calls, no communication of any kind, skepticism gave way to urgency. By evening, law enforcement officially classified Jennifer as missing, launching a search operation across Orlando. Flyers with her face were printed and distributed. Local news stations picked up the story. Volunteers joined her family in canvassing neighborhoods. What began as confusion escalated into dread, fueled by the eerie lack of leads. Then, 2 days later, a breakthrough, or so it seemed. Jennifer's car was located at the Huntington on the Green apartment complex, about a mile from her condo. It had been parked there for days, unnoticed in the lot of a high-crime neighborhood. To investigators, this discovery marked a chilling escalation. The vehicle was locked, her belongings inside, and no fingerprints or DNA were recoverable. Whoever had left the car there had been meticulous, careful to wipe away evidence. But what electrified the case was not the car itself. It was the surveillance footage. Cameras near the Huntington captured someone parking Jennifer's vehicle and walking away. Grainy, distorted images showed a figure calmly exiting the car and moving toward the apartment complex. The individual's face, tragically, was obscured by what police called gate camouflage. For just a few frames, a fence post aligned perfectly with the suspect's head in each shot, preventing a clear view. All that remained was the silhouette. Average build, average height, wearing clothing indistinct enough to offer no clue. Law enforcement estimated the figure could be anywhere between 5 feet 3 inches and 5 feet 5 inches. Some saw a man. Others thought it might have been a woman. The ambiguity was maddening. The video's haunting stills spread quickly across television broadcasts and newspaper headlines. The unidentified person of interest, as police labeled them, became the most elusive figure in the investigation. Viewers studied the footage endlessly, dissecting the suspect's walk, the tilt of the shoulders, the swing of the arms. Yet no conclusive identification ever emerged. For Jennifer's family, the footage was devastating. It offered the strongest lead yet simultaneously blocked any path forward. Someone had parked Jennifer's car. Someone knew what had happened, but that someone had melted into obscurity, shielded by grainy pixels and silence. As days turned into weeks, search efforts expanded. Dive teams scoured nearby lakes. Dogs were brought in to trace scents. Volunteers combed fields and wooded areas. Thousands of tips poured in, each followed many dead ends. Rumors swirled, from abductions by strangers to encounters with construction workers renovating the condos where Jennifer lived. Nothing solidified into fact. Yet through it all, the Kesse family refused to let their daughter's story fade. They appeared on national television, pleading for information. They organized search parties and fundraisers. They pushed law enforcement relentlessly, unwilling to accept ambiguity. The community, too, felt the weight of Jennifer's absence. Orlando was no stranger to crime, but the brazenness of her disappearance, snatched from her own home in the prime of her life, was unnerving even to seasoned residents. The second chapter of Jennifer's story closed with more questions than answers. Car left abandoned, a faceless figure caught on tape, a family in torment, and a young woman whose promising future had been ripped away with terrifying precision. Whatever had happened to Jennifer, it was clear. Someone had orchestrated her disappearance with chilling calculation, leaving behind just enough to taunt investigators, but never enough to solve the riddle. In the weeks that followed the discovery of Jennifer Kesse's car, hope clashed with frustration. Detectives pursued every angle, determined to piece together the hours between Jennifer leaving her condo and her car being abandoned. Yet with each lead pursued, the puzzle only grew more complex. The surveillance footage remained the centerpiece of the investigation. Analysts dissected it frame by frame, attempting to extract more detail. Experts studied the stride of the shadowy figure, debating whether the gait was masculine or feminine, whether the person carried themselves like someone young or middle-aged. Theories multiplied, but none offered certainty. What stood out most was how calm the individual appeared. They did not run, did not look over their shoulder. Whoever parked Jennifer's car walked away with the composure of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Attention soon shifted toward Jennifer's own condo complex, the Mosaic at Millennia. At the time, the property was undergoing major renovations. Construction crews and temporary workers moved in and out daily. Security was minimal and surveillance cameras were limited. Some residents voiced concerns about safety long before Jennifer's disappearance, noting the unfamiliar faces and the lack of thorough background checks for laborers. Detectives questioned dozens of workers, but the transient nature of the job made accountability difficult. Many had already moved on to other sites, leaving investigators with little more than vague descriptions. Equally troubling were accounts from Jennifer's friends and family. In the days before she vanished, Jennifer mentioned feeling uneasy about some of the men working at her complex. She told loved ones that workers sometimes made comments or watched her too closely. Nothing ever escalated to an incident, but the unease was real enough that she preferred not to walk alone at night. These recollections suggested that Jennifer may have been targeted close to home. Beyond the construction crews, detectives cast a wide net. They examined her relationships, from co-workers to past acquaintances, searching for hidden tensions or grudges. Jennifer's boyfriend, Rob, who lived several hours away, was quickly cleared. He had been at work on the day she disappeared, with colleagues verifying his alibi. Friends and colleagues described Jennifer as driven and grounded, without any involvement in risky behavior. Her life left little room for the kind of secret double existence investigators sometimes uncover in missing persons cases. Still, police dug deeper. They monitored Jennifer's financial accounts and phone records. No withdrawals, no unusual charges, no incoming calls. It was as if she had vanished without ever leaving a digital trace. For a young woman as organized as Jennifer, the sudden silence was jarring and unnatural. By February, tips were flooding in, but most proved to be mirages. Some claimed sightings of Jennifer in nearby towns. Others insisted they had information about the mysterious figure from the surveillance footage. Each lead was checked, but none held weight. The investigation became a battle against time. Detectives knew that the longer a case remained unsolved, the colder it became. One of the more promising avenues involved the condition of Jennifer's car. When examined, the driver's seat appeared adjusted further back than Jennifer would have positioned it, suggesting someone taller had driven. This subtle detail, though significant, led to no breakthrough. Fingerprints inside the vehicle belonged either to Jennifer or to those with legitimate reasons for contact. Whoever parked the car at the Huntington on the Green complex had meticulously erased their presence. The lack of physical evidence frustrated both investigators and Jennifer's family. Orlando police devoted considerable resources, but the case produced no decisive leads. Public appeals continued, with the Kesse family stepping in front of cameras repeatedly to keep Jennifer's name alive in the media. They believed that someone somewhere had information, and they were unwilling to let the trail go cold. As the months passed, the emotional toll deepened. Jennifer's condo remained a haunting reminder of her absence. Her clothes hung neatly in the closet. Her photographs lined the walls. Her bed was perfectly made. Everything suggested she intended to return. Yet her family could not bring themselves to change anything. They treated the condo like a frozen moment in time, a place where Jennifer's life had been paused rather than ended. Meanwhile, speculation swirled. Some theorized she had been abducted while walking to her car in the morning, possibly by someone lying in wait. Others believed she may have been approached by someone she trusted, someone who convinced her to unlock her door or step outside. The placement of her car in a high-crime area suggested an effort to divert suspicion or delay discovery. Yet none of these theories could be confirmed. Frustration grew further when law enforcement admitted the investigation faced serious limitations. Without eyewitnesses, without clear footage, without forensic evidence, they were trapped in a cycle of chasing shadows. Detectives worked leads as far as Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, fueled by rumors and reported sightings, but every trail ended in disappointment. The Kesse family, unwilling to wait passively, mobilized their own resources. They hired private investigators, put up billboards, and distributed thousands of flyers. Their persistence kept Jennifer's face in public view, but even these efforts brought no solid answers. The mystery of her disappearance seemed to defy resolution. By late 2006, nearly a year after Jennifer went missing, the case had reached a painful standstill. The surveillance footage remained the most crucial piece of evidence, yet it was also the most maddeningly vague. No arrests had been made. No suspect had emerged. Jennifer Kesse's name had become synonymous with vanishing. Her life interrupted in a way that left her family and investigators circling the same questions over and over. What happened that January morning? Who parked her car? And why had every clue dissolved into silence? For the Kesse family, the weight was unbearable. They had no remains to mourn, no answers to ease their torment. What they did have was determination, and an unrelenting promise that Jennifer would not be forgotten, no matter how long it took to uncover the truth. The story of Jennifer Kesse was no longer just a missing persons case. It had become a fight for justice in the face of silence, a test of endurance against the weight of time. As the years passed, the search for Jennifer Kesse transformed from an urgent investigation into an enduring battle against fading memory. What began in January 2006 as a frantic hunt for a missing 24-year-old professional evolved into one of Florida's most haunting cold cases, marked by heartbreak, persistence, and unanswered questions. By the second anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance, the case had grown frustratingly stagnant. Public appeals still drew attention, but no concrete breakthroughs emerged. The same indistinct surveillance figure remained the focal point, yet advances in technology failed to enhance the grainy images into something identifiable. Detectives remained on the case, but the absence of new evidence kept progress at a standstill. Jennifer's family refused to accept silence as an answer. Her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse, became relentless advocates, speaking at press conferences, organizing community events, and demanding accountability. They used every media outlet available to keep Jennifer's name circulating, determined that her story not slip into obscurity. Their advocacy extended beyond Jennifer, too. They became voices for other families of the missing, using their platform to highlight flaws in the system and the emotional devastation caused by prolonged uncertainty. The years following Jennifer's disappearance saw changes in how missing persons investigations were approached. Her case drew attention to the vulnerabilities faced by young adults, particularly women living alone, and sparked conversations about apartment complex safety, background checks for contractors, and the need for broader awareness campaigns. Jennifer's story, though unsolved, reshaped public consciousness. Despite the family's advocacy, progress remained elusive. In 2010, a new wave of attention was generated through national television exposure. Shows like America's Most Wanted and Dateline NBC revisited Jennifer's case, presenting it to wider audiences and prompting fresh tips. Leads emerged, but once again, none produced the missing piece of the puzzle. Each cycle of renewed publicity raised hopes, only for them to crash against the wall of inconclusive evidence. Frustration with the official handling of the case grew. The Kesse family began to feel that opportunities had been missed in the crucial early days, and that bureaucracy was hindering further investigation. This tension reached a breaking point in 2018 when they made the bold decision to sue the Orlando Police Department for access to Jennifer's case files. After 12 years of waiting, they wanted control, believing that with private investigators and fresh eyes, they might uncover what had been overlooked. The lawsuit was a turning point. After legal battles, the family gained access to tens of thousands of pages of documents, photos, and recordings. For Drew and Joyce, it was both empowering and overwhelming, a flood of information without a clear roadmap. Still, they embraced the challenge, reviewing the files meticulously, determined to find threads worth pulling. Private investigators combed through the materials, re-interviewing witnesses and re-examining details long buried in paperwork. They scrutinized the timeline of the morning Jennifer vanished, the testimony of neighbors, and the movements of contractors at her condo. While no definitive breakthroughs emerged, the effort renewed momentum and provided the family with the sense that they were no longer waiting passively but actively fighting for answers. Throughout this process, the emotional weight remained immense. Jennifer's condo had long been sold, but memories of her filled every step of the investigation. For her family, time did not dull the ache. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went, and milestones Jennifer should have celebrated were instead marked with vigils. Each year without resolution deepened the wound but also sharpened their resolve. The case continued to attract public fascination. Online forums, podcasts, and true crime documentaries dissected every known detail, speculating on possibilities. Some focused on the construction workers at the condo, others on the eerie composure of the unknown figure in the footage. Theories multiplied, but none could be proven. What endured most was the chilling fact: Jennifer Kesse had stepped into an ordinary morning routine and was swallowed by circumstances that left no trace.